Eleanor Hartley thought she had found love at 71 when she married Julian Carter, a charming 29-year-old. But the man she trusted most hid a dark secret, one that could have destroyed her fortune and her life. Eleanor Hartley had always been a woman of routine, precision, and quiet dignity. At 71, she lived in a sprawling countryside mansion inherited from generations of family wealth, surrounded by manicured gardens and framed oil paintings that whispered the story of her lineage. Life after widowhood had been gentle but lonely. Friends visited occasionally, charity events punctuated her calendar, and she spent her days reading, gardening, and reflecting on decades filled with love, loss, and the subtle disappointments of life. She had resigned herself to a life of calm solitude, believing that passion and excitement were luxuries she could no longer indulge. Yet, beneath her composed exterior, a longing for companionship had never fully disappeared. She wanted someone who could see her as Eleanor, not merely the widow of a wealthy man, not merely the owner of an estate that commanded envy and admiration. It was at a small art exhibit in the city that she first encountered Julian Carter. He was striking, not in the conventional sense of age-matched elegance, but in a way that radiated youthful confidence and effortless charm. At 29, Julian was ambitious, with an easy smile that drew people toward him, and a keen intellect that made his conversation engaging. When he approached Eleanor, complimenting her insights on a painting, she was surprised by how natural the interaction felt. It was not flattery she sensed, but a genuine interest in her thoughts and perspectives. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt a spark of curiosity and excitement she had long thought dormant. Their meetings grew more frequent, often at galleries, quiet cafes, and charity events where Julian would appear genuinely fascinated by Eleanor's life and interests. Friends expressed skepticism, sometimes gently warning Eleanor about the dramatic age difference, but she dismissed it, insisting that true connection could not be measured by years. Julian seemed attentive, respectful, and completely absorbed in her presence. He remembered the smallest details about her favorite flowers, her preferred authors, and the charities she supported. Eleanor felt a sense of validation, as if someone finally saw her as more than a figurehead of wealth and age. Despite the whirlwind of attention and the whispers of doubt surrounding their growing relationship, Eleanor allowed herself to hope. Her heart, once cautious and guarded, began to embrace the excitement of romance. She imagined that perhaps, at the twilight of her life, she had found someone who could bring joy, energy, and companionship. Julian seemed to understand her vulnerabilities without exploiting them. He admired her independence, her intelligence, and the life she had built on her own. As their relationship deepened, Eleanor experienced emotions she had not felt in decades. A thrill of anticipation at messages from Julian, a lightness in her step when he visited, and a warmth that spread through her chest when he complimented her sincerity and wisdom. She began to envision a future where age was no barrier, where trust and connection mattered more than the numbers on a birth certificate. Yet, even in these moments of joy, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered caution. Eleanor had been wise enough to navigate life's challenges, but the promise of romance at this stage in her life carried a vulnerability she had never felt before. Trusting Julian entirely felt natural, but the stakes had never been higher. She was wealthy, alone, and yearning for companionship, a combination that could either lead to happiness or a devastating betrayal. After their marriage, Eleanor and Julian settled into what seemed like an ideal life together. The mansion, once quiet and methodical, now echoed with activity and energy. Julian handled the logistics of their shared life with apparent enthusiasm, managing investments, arranging trips, and introducing Eleanor to a network of influential people far younger than herself. At first, everything felt invigorating. Eleanor marveled at how different her days had become. No longer filled only with routine, they were now infused with excitement and social engagements she had never imagined pursuing in her later years. Julian's charm was magnetic, drawing attention wherever they went. Eleanor felt proud to be seen with him, as though the world itself recognized the vitality he brought into her life. Neighbors and acquaintances whispered about the age difference. Some hinted at opportunism, suggesting that Julian's interest might lie more in Eleanor's wealth than in her personality. She heard these murmurs but dismissed them, trusting the sincerity in Julian's eyes, the warmth in his gestures, and the constant attentiveness that had first drawn her to him. She believed that love could not be measured in years, and she allowed herself to bask in the illusion of genuine partnership. Every morning, she woke to find breakfast prepared, flowers arranged in her favorite vases, and notes of affection tucked into drawers she hadn't used in years. Felt like being young again, and she reveled in it. Yet, as the months passed, subtle signs began to unsettle Eleanor. Small possessions went missing, sometimes an expensive piece of jewelry, other times documents she had kept for decades. At first, she thought herself forgetful, chalking up the incidents to the natural chaos of life. But soon, she began to notice discrepancies in Julian's stories. Errands he claimed to have run didn't align with receipts or timestamps. Phone calls he said were brief seemed to last for hours. A few letters and emails she had assumed were delivered never appeared. Eleanor tried to push these observations aside, unwilling to let suspicion tarnish the happiness she had found. She told herself that trust was fundamental to any relationship and that Julian had proven himself worthy of it. Despite these uneasy moments, Eleanor allowed Julian complete access to her finances and personal matters. She believed in his integrity, convinced that the man she had chosen genuinely cared for her well-being. She shared her investment plans, charitable intentions, and estate arrangements without hesitation. Julian appeared grateful, attentive, and careful, reinforcing her belief that her trust was justified. Their days together were a mix of laughter, shared meals, and discussions about art, travel, and the finer points of life that Eleanor had long enjoyed alone. Yet beneath the surface, a tension was building. Eleanor's intuition, honed over decades of experience and observation, sensed that something was off. The small inconsistencies she had brushed aside began to accumulate, forming a pattern too deliberate to ignore. There was an undercurrent of secrecy in Julian's behavior, a subtle defensiveness when she asked questions, and an inexplicable eagerness to manage her affairs personally. Eleanor felt a gnawing uncertainty that she could not fully articulate. The man she trusted most, the man she had chosen to share her final years with, might not be who he appeared to be. The cracks in Julian's carefully constructed facade grew more visible as Eleanor began to notice patterns that could no longer be dismissed. At first, they were small: a vague excuse about a business meeting, an unreturned phone call, an unexpected overnight trip. But soon, these inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. Eleanor started paying closer attention, discreetly observing his movements and checking details she had previously taken for granted. She discovered that the addresses he provided for work meetings didn't exist, that certain emails he claimed to have sent were never delivered, and that phone numbers he used were linked to multiple identities. It was a chilling revelation. Julian's life was not as transparent as he had made it appear. Curiosity and fear drove Eleanor to hire a private investigator, someone skilled in uncovering hidden truths. The investigator's findings were horrifying. Julian had maintained multiple aliases, each associated with different properties, bank accounts, and businesses. Every alias had its own set of carefully crafted stories, designed to convince previous partners of his wealth and credibility. Eleanor learned that Julian had a history of targeting older, affluent individuals, slowly earning their trust before gaining access to their assets. Each discovery made her stomach turn, as the man she had welcomed into her home, shared her life with, and confided in had been living a secret life of manipulation and deceit. The more Eleanor uncovered, the more she questioned every interaction they had shared. Every compliment, every act of apparent devotion, now seemed like a calculated move. Julian's attentiveness was no longer heartwarming. It was predatory. His charm was not genuine affection but a tool to disarm and manipulate. Eleanor felt a profound sense of betrayal, one that cut deeper because it came from someone she had loved and trusted completely. She replayed their months together, analyzing his words and actions with the clarity of hindsight, realizing that his care had never been for her well-being but for the potential gain he could extract from her life. Despite her anger and fear, Eleanor maintained a careful outward composure. She could not yet confront Julian openly. He was cunning, persuasive, and aware of the power he wielded over her through trust and charm. Instead, she focused on gathering evidence, documenting everything that hinted at deception. She followed him discreetly, noted financial transactions, and stored records of communications that revealed the extent of his manipulation. Each piece of information painted a more damning picture, confirming that Julian was a master of deceit, capable of living a double life that no one would have suspected. Eleanor's once comforting home had become a place of vigilance. Every knock at the door, every unexpected message, and every unanswered call filled her with anxiety. The man she had married, who seemed so devoted and loving, was a stranger in every meaningful sense. The realization left her feeling vulnerable, yet a small spark of resolve began to grow within her. Julian might have hidden his true nature, but Eleanor was not powerless. She understood that knowledge was her first weapon against him. The charm and energy that had initially captivated her were now the very tools she needed to dismantle the life of lies he had built, step by step, before he could inflict irreparable harm. The sense of impending betrayal weighed heavily on Eleanor as she carefully monitored Julian's actions. The man she had trusted so completely was now under the lens of scrutiny, and each day revealed new layers of deception. She discovered that he had been manipulating her financial documents for months, subtly redirecting funds into accounts she had never authorized. Small amounts at first, almost imperceptible, but then larger sums began to vanish, leaving gaps in her carefully managed estate. It was as though Julian had been practicing, testing boundaries, and waiting for the moment when she would be unable to stop him. Eleanor realized that Julian's manipulation extended far beyond money. He had prepared forged legal documents, fake medical evaluations, and even counterfeit identification that could allow him to gain full control of her estate. Every precaution she had thought would protect her wealth was compromised. Every trust she had placed in him weaponized. She felt a cold clarity. The man she had married for companionship had intended to exploit her entirely. The betrayal was not impulsive or opportunistic. It had been meticulously planned. Despite the shock, Eleanor refused to panic. Her years of experience had taught her the value of strategy over impulse. She began to secure her assets, moving funds into accounts with legal safeguards and appointing trustworthy advisors to oversee her estate. She documented Julian's suspicious behavior meticulously, creating a paper trail that could withstand legal scrutiny. Each action she took was calculated to protect herself without tipping him off, as Julian's cunning made direct confrontation risky. What made the situation even more terrifying was Julian's ability to maintain a veneer of normalcy. To the outside world, he remained the devoted husband, attending social functions, charming acquaintances, and tending to Eleanor with apparent affection. He was careful to avoid arousing suspicion, using his charisma to mask his intentions. Yet Eleanor had learned to see through the performance. She observed his movements, scrutinized his communications, and verified every claim he made. The evidence was mounting, and the picture it painted was damning. Julian had constructed an elaborate scheme designed to take everything from her, all while maintaining the illusion of love and loyalty. Eleanor's nights became sleepless as she wrestled with the realization that the man she had trusted most could have destroyed her life. Each day brought a mix of fear and determination. Fear of what might happen if she miscalculated, and determination to see justice done. She could not allow herself to be a victim, no matter how skilled Julian's deception had been. Slowly, methodically, she gathered proof of his duplicity, assembling documents, recordings, and witness accounts that revealed the full extent of his plan. The betrayal was complete, but Eleanor's resolve was stronger than ever. In the quiet moments, she reflected on the lessons of trust and vigilance. Julian had appeared to be the answer to her loneliness, the spark that brought warmth and energy into her later years. Instead, he had been a predator, exploiting her kindness and generosity for personal gain. Yet, Eleanor refused to be crushed by the deception. She had uncovered the truth in time and had begun taking steps to ensure that Julian would face the consequences of his actions. The battle was far from over, But Eleanor's courage and strategic thinking had given her an advantage that he had never anticipated. Eleanor knew that exposing Julian would require patience, precision, and an unshakable resolve. She could no longer rely on instinct alone. The man she had trusted was cunning and dangerous, and a single misstep could undo months of careful preparation. Working quietly, she compiled evidence of his lies, fraud, and manipulations. Every bank statement, every email, every document he had falsified became a piece of a puzzle that would ultimately reveal the true scope of his deception. She coordinated with attorneys and investigators who specialized in financial crimes and elder exploitation, carefully constructing a case that could stand up in court. Julian, unaware of the meticulous trap closing around him, continued his charade. He maintained his public image as a devoted husband, charming acquaintances and friends, and behaving as if nothing were amiss. But behind the smiles, Eleanor's careful monitoring and strategic moves had cornered him. The offshore accounts he thought were hidden, the forged legal documents he believed would give him control, and the multiple identities he had relied upon were all exposed through her diligence. For the first time, Julian faced the reality that his schemes were unraveling. When the case finally reached the authorities, the investigation revealed a shocking level of premeditation. Julian's history of targeting older, wealthy individuals, his use of aliases, and the intricate network of forged documents painted a portrait of a man who had spent years perfecting his methods. Each revelation was a blow to the illusion of trust he had so carefully maintained. The courtroom became a stage where Eleanor's courage and foresight were on full display, demonstrating not only the betrayal she had endured, but also her ability to reclaim control over her life and fortune. The trial was swift and decisive. Julian faced multiple charges, including fraud, theft, and attempted exploitation of an elderly person. Evidence gathered by Eleanor and her team left little room for defense. Witnesses corroborated her findings, financial experts testified to the manipulation of her accounts, and investigators presented proof of Julian's double life. The verdict was inevitable, and when Julian was convicted, Eleanor felt a mixture of vindication and relief. Justice had been served, but more importantly, she had survived an ordeal that could have destroyed her. In the aftermath, Eleanor emerged stronger and wiser. The experience left her cautious but not bitter, aware of the vulnerabilities that had once made her a target, yet determined to reclaim her independence. She returned to her routines with renewed focus, dedicating time to her passions, charitable causes, and the friendships that had remained loyal throughout the ordeal. The mansion, once a place of isolation, became a symbol of resilience, a testament to her ability to navigate deception, danger, and betrayal. Eleanor's story spread quietly at first, then gained attention as a cautionary tale. People marveled at the unlikely marriage and the dramatic exposure of Julian's crimes. Yet beneath the headlines, the narrative was more than a story of betrayal. It was a testament to vigilance, intelligence, and courage. Eleanor had faced the unimaginable. A man she had loved and trusted most had been a master of deceit, and emerged not just unbroken, but empowered. Her life, though marked by scandal, became an enduring reminder that awareness and determination can turn betrayal into triumph, and that even in the darkest moments, one can reclaim control and justice.